Hello again. We're entering the next phase of our character creation. Um, Today we're going to go ahead and do a really quick and dirty UV unwrap of our character and trying to create some textures to apply to him. Um, I say quick and dirty, and I really do mean it. This will be the fastest and maybe the easiest way to produce something as far as an unwrapped texture for your character. But as we'll see as we go through this, it's definitely not the cleanest way, and we'll look at some opportunities along the way to do this a better way. But for now, we're just going to go, as I said, as quick and as easy as we can. So the first thing I do, I'm still on the modeling tab here. That's the toolkit we've got up, and here's our UV. I'm going to, with my character selected here, open up the UV editor, and I get this screen here, and it's just really kind of gnarly. And what this does is I'm going to try and zoom in here. Is it just shows you right now how this UV is laid out, and so UV is how our textures are applied to the model we've got going. And I'm going to guess actually this started as a cube. That's what we started with when we created this initial character body. And you can see that cube unfolded the way most cubes are in a UV. And you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 sides to this cube. And then as we added to it, and as we extruded and did all this other stuff, and added smoothing groups, it just kind of, I don't know, it got funky with the lines. And so we've got all kinds of things crisscrossed here. That's not what we want at all. So the next piece of magic we're going to perform is we're going to go to UV, and we're just going to go to automatic. And lo and behold, look at all this. This looks more like the character we created. This is Maya's attempt at laying out the UVs based on the model that you've got selected. And you can really see, right? We can see this. This looks to be the back of the character, right? Here's two profiles here. I've still got symmetry on, and so even as I select here in UV land, we get all this craziness. So that's back, sides. Here's kind of the top of the arms going down to the chest. This looks like the front of the character. Hands, top or the bottom of the hands. Here's the side of the hands. The other side. So you can see it's kind of all over the board, right? And um, well, we'll talk about that as we get there. So let me just really quick. We've got this. It's laid out. Let's just assume for the moment that we trust Maya. One of the cool things that happened when we hit this automatic, let me just go ahead and pull that up real quick before we go any further. So if I hit this square on automatic, you can see we've got a lot of cool options here. Mapping settings, 6 planes. This basically says we're coming at this from 6 sides of the model. Um, we're optimizing this for fewer pieces, and so it's trying to group each of these sections into as few groups as possible. So that's good. And here's what's really cool about this is in our layout, we've got scale mode set to uniform, and I think these should be your default settings. I did play with these a little earlier. So if your settings don't look like this, you can change them so that they can. Anyway, so the scale mode uniform, this is what we really like to get out of this. And what that does is it makes sure that each and every little piece is in scale with each other. Now there are some times when you go to do an unwrap of a character that for whatever reason the modeling tool or you yourself decide that, you know what, I want a lot more detail or a lot more just focus on this particular piece of the model. Say you really just want to zoom in on the chest because that's probably the, you're gonna be seeing this guy coming at you. He's 9 foot tall. The chest is where the camera's gonna be at if he's coming at you in a game. And so you want a lot of detail there. So you'd make that bigger. But here we wanted this all uniform and all scale, and that's what we got. So we've got a uniform scale, shell laid out into a square, which is this square we've got here. We're preset for a 512 map. Let's look at these numbers while we're in here. So most of the time, your textures for UV unwrap coming into Maya and going out into game engines. They really want a lot of game engines are very specific about they've got to be square, these textures, assets, and they need to be of the binary persuasion. So a multiple going up of two, basically, right? So if you think about your computer languages and your computer numbers, right? We've got 32, 64, 128, and we just kind of keep doubling this, right? You can see the history of video game systems going along here, right? As we went back to 8-bit, 16-bit, 32, 64, and on and on. These are just, well, we can get into that another day. These are the numbers computers most easily understand. And so this seems to be set for a 512 map. Um, all good settings, but I just want to really point out this uniform thing right here. I'm going to close that, and I've lectured long enough. We're going to get into some real stuff. So we're going to go into polygons here in this secondary UV editor window. And I'm going to give us a UV snapshot because we decided for now we trust Maya and how it laid this out. So UV snapshot. And this is what this is going to do is it's going to take this new square that we've just created, and it's going to save it off for us as a file that we can open up in Photoshop and know exactly what we're painting and where we're painting it. So I'm going to make the file name out UV. That's fine. We'll do that. Let's do stick to 512. We may want to go bigger if we want more detail, but 512 right now, X and Y is something we can work with. We'll keep the aspect ratio, color value. Let me just go ahead and make this a PNG. I prefer to do just about everything in PNGs and say OK. So we should have an outuv.png in our images folder. So I'm going to go down here to Photoshop. And I'm going to open up a new file, and I'm already pointed to the correct folder, which is my documents, Maya projects, Toon Guy, images. Okay, and I've already done some playing with this in another file, but I've got outuv.png, and that looks like what we just looked at. So we're going to open that up, and here we go. Here's that stencil of the UV all laid out for us. Excuse me while I drink my tea. And I'm going to start adding some layers in here. Now I don't know how much 2D experience that everyone has, but we're not going to necessarily teach that. But I'm going to go through here, and we're going to do it real quick and dirty, as I said. So for now, let's just say we want the base of this guy to be blue. I'm going to move my stencil up top to that layer. Just go ahead and name our layer so we know what we're doing. And this layer we want blue overalls, so we're just going to color that all in. That's our base color. And if we just exported this as a PNG and used it as a texture, then our guy would be completely painted blue, but that's not quite what we want. We can do a little more detail than that. So I'm going to go here and say we want white gloves. Let's imagine that's what we want to do. I'm going to zoom in to about 500. Excuse me. All right. I'm going to click here, which gives me back to black and white. Flip those around. I'm going to use my square selection tool. I've already trialed and errored this, and I know what most of this is. These are fingers here, and thumbs, and fingertips, and all the little pieces that we need for our hand. So I'm going to grab those areas that the stencil's cluing me in on, and I'm just going to fill that with my foreground color, which happens to be white right now. Use my arrow key to move that up just a touch. Fill with white. These are fingertips. Guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to fill it with white. Now this can be a whole lot more detailed. We're really just coloring right now at this point. naturally, when we really get into this and really start to become artistes, we're going to be adding a whole lot more texture, a whole lot more depth and shadow and detail to what we're doing. But for now, we're just coloring him in. There's another hand. Sorry, as I slowly move this up. And I'm trying to go through here just as quick as I can to illustrate what we're doing. Ordinarily, I would take an insane amount of tedious time in here. As easy it is to get lost in a 3D program, working on the details, just as easy here in Photoshop and 2D. And I do tend to do a lot of trial and error in this particular program. That looks like an arm, and that looks like the hand. And so as we're in here looking at this, and we'll be back and forth between here and Maya a few times, I assume. But you can see that there's a lot of things that they're kind of all over the place, right? Like if I was to lay all this out myself instead of letting Maya do the work for me, I think I would have placed all the little hand pieces a whole lot closer together. Maybe even stitched those out as their own elements. As far as the UV is concerned, and then grouped them nicely so that they'd be easier to just come in and add detail to. We got two more hands down here. And one's just a little higher up in the image than the other. Okay, we've got that done. Excuse me. Looks like perhaps we've covered all of our hands. And so if we were to apply this right now, we would have just a lot of white gloves and blue everything else. All right, I'm going to click here, give us a new layer, and this will be for our boots. We can keep going with the grab and fill, but I'm gonna do this as a paintbrush. Flip these around. Now I've got black selected. Hello. I must have had something selected still. There we go. All right, I want to follow this line right here and start filling that in. Guess we could have gone brown. We could have given fancy bright tennis shoes. But this is what we're doing. These look like the backs of boots, shoes, what have you. Since these are angled, that's why I'm going ahead and using the brush instead of using my selection tool and just getting squared off pieces. Got those. Oh, look, more boots. All right, I'm going to try and cheat a little bit here. Look how close our black and white are, and we're zoomed in at 500 times the normal for this, and we can see just how close the black boots and the white gloves are, since we went ahead and let Maya lay this out for us. Command D to deselect that, because otherwise we'd just be drawing inside of it. I'll get the finer pieces. I believe these other bits here are also pieces of boot. Which get dangerously close to what looks like might be pieces of pant. If you're showing any of this to a true 2D Photoshop artiste right now, they're probably throwing up. But as I promised, this was going to be the quick and dirty way to do all of this work. If I'm not mistaken, these are also pieces of boot. What the heck, we'll paint them. And we'll know later, won't we? I could try for a coverall motif, but that could get hard to match up in our quick model here. So I'm just going to use a red, and we're going to cut them off at the waist. We're going to give them a red top and blue pants. Whoops, almost forgot to start a new layer. Yep, red shirt. Too far there. That was safe to do since we changed our foreground color. Round about there, and I'm going to move up to make sure I get the rest of that neck. And let's go ahead and try and aim for that line right there. I use my brush to fill in this little bit. Good enough. It's a shorter line by two longer bits, so I'm going to guess the waist that we picked was right here. And again, if I go all the way up to paint this, then we're dangerously close to getting into the blue pants, but we'll try it. I think I could have done more. We'll fix it. We got some curvature here, but I think I'm going to try and come down more. go. If this seems like it's taking a while, I promise you it will take much longer when you're really, really trying to make a nice texture. Right now we're just coloring with Sharpies. Grr. Again, we've got some pieces that are very close to each other, so we may see some bleed over as we go back into our actual model. Pretty sure this is still arm. But the placement of such may give us red fingertips. Come back over and make sure I grab that. Excuse me. We may have covered everything. Well, I know where some issues are, but we'll come back to those. I think this is the front. Let's just get stupid while we're in here real quick. We're going to give him a logo, a small logo on a shirt. Maybe not small enough. We'll come down some more. There we go. I believe that's the front of his shirt, so we'll know more later. Okay, so we definitely don't want to bake this entire image back on with all the lines, so I'm going to turn that off. We'll zoom back out and look at this ugly blocky mess. What kind of ridiculousness is this? This is actually, no kidding, I believe, white gloves, blue pants, a red DET shirt, and black shoes. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to save as. Let's go ahead and save that as the PSD for now, so we've got access to these layers for later. We also save as a PNG that we actually want to apply in Maya, and this will be Toon Guy body. We'll save that. That's all well and good. I wonder how that little logo is going to come out. All right, here we go. Moment of truth. We're going to go back into Maya. We don't need this anymore. The first thing I'm going to do is open up my Hypershade editor. And if I was just to apply this to Lambert 1 here, everything in my scene would get it because that's kind of the default. So I'm going to make a brand new Lambert. And I want to know what this Lambert is, so we're going to call this Toon Guy body texture, or you know what? Let's go. We'll use the Toon Guy body shader. Cool. Here's our color. I'm going to change that. So I clicked on the little square guy. I want to use a file. So I get my little file node now. I'm going to go over here to image name. Click around in here, and this was Toon Guy body. Yep, there it is. Okay, I've created a new texture node, and it's just wrapping it around this model in a standard way, and it looks horrendous. But since we have the texture node now applied to this guy, we open that back up. It should work out nicely. So I'm going to go to body, shader, assign material to selection. No renderable object is selected for assignment. Gee, it looked selected to me. Object mode, select that guy. What in the world? Alright, I may not have saved properly the UV unwrap. That should be going. Where is my window? Here's our unwrap. Here's the texture we assigned. It's supposed to be lining up. Alright, I'm going to pause for a minute and figure out what I did wrong. Okay, for the life of me, I don't know what happened, but it's easy enough to just kind of start over. Most of the work we did was in Photoshop. That's all been saved, and luckily Maya's automatic UV unwrapping is really automatic. And so if we did it again, we'd get the exact same layout. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to abandon this file. I'm going to go ahead and open the file that we started with, which may be something completely different for you. But for me, here it is. This is before we started down any of this mess with the UV texturing. So here he is. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open up my UV editor. There's that mess again. This time I've turned the checkerboard on, and you can kind of see what just this kind of textured checkerboard with a little bit of color variance on it looks like on this body, right? So here's kind of the start of the square where we were at. And then as we stretched and as we skewed, things stretch and skew in the texturing, just like we would expect it to. I'm going to pull this down to the side. We're going to do this UV again, automatic. I'm going to hit the square just to make sure. I'm going to reset the settings on this, and I'm going to go ahead and say project. And that should line things up nicely. You can already see this is the seam that we were looking at earlier, right? This was the top of the body. And this is about where we put the DET 340 logo in the Photoshop file. So we've rewrapped. Don't know why we had to, but we did. We got the exact same layout as we did before, so I'm just going to go ahead and close that. Alright, I'm going to go into object mode here. I don't know what's going on. I'm going to go all the way in to Lambert 1. And rather than make a new texture this time, I'm just going to go ahead and use what we've got here. And so this will apply to the head, but we'll fix that in a minute. Here's my color. Click the square. I want this to be a file. And here's the Toon Guy body PNG. All right, that looks right. That's what we had before. I'm going to open that up. And boom. Looks like we did something weird with the front of the shirt where it's coming down too low, which we can go back into Photoshop and fix and reload. I knew this was going to be a problem. We've got some blue here where we expect black boots, and that's again where the automatic unwrapping was unwrapping. And we do have some blue or some black up here, and that's what the same texture applied to the head would look like. So before we go back into Photoshop, let me go back into Hypershade and fix that jazz. So here's Hypershade. That's the first Lambert. I'm going to go ahead and create a new one. Let me rename that from here. Toon body shader. Okay. Same thing we just did. I'm going to say this is a color, it's a 2D texture, it's a file. Toon Guy body. Okay. Should be the exact same as this Lambert one. Slide this over here. I'm going to select that body. Again, let me apply this. Assign to selection. Looks the exact same as it did, as we expected. But I'm going to fix this head. So the head and even the hidden objects we've got in here, like that space helmet we were working on, is to have Lambert 1 applied to it automatically, which means that all try and wrap this goofy texture of ours around it. So here's Lambert. I'm going to go to color. I'm just going to take all this out, hit enter. Looks like it went back to gray. Yes, we have a gray head. We have a slightly messed up body, but it does kind of follow some of what we were looking at. So that does what we wanted it to. I'm going to spend another couple minutes and just try and clean up some of this and some of the stuff on the foot. Maybe we can get to this piece right here where it's not right. And we can even add some more details now that we know that it worked right. Really don't know what happened to that last file, but as I said, it was easy enough to recover since most of what we did was in Photoshop. So I'm going to go back into Photoshop. Here's this thing. And it looks like we went down a bit too far on our on the front of our shirt. So let me zoom into that. I turn my guides back on. Don't need that anymore. And I'm going to go down to my red shirt, which has got only red in it. Snap out a selection, move that up just a touch, and delete. Okay, that's good. Command D to deselect. What else did I need to do? Oh, I needed to paint some black right in here. This is the front of our, let's go back over to Maya. This is the front of our boots. That's exactly where the seam was, right? And so we just need to paint a little bit of black on that first row of polys there. So let me go back to Photoshop and do that. I'm going to go to my black boots layer so I can keep it all in the same area. Whoops. Command Z to undo. I need black, not red. Unless these are just some really cool shoes. Paint that in. Paint that in. What else do we see a problem with? It looked like we had some, we had white going into, yeah, we got white going over on the front arm, maybe even a little on the second. Just go ahead and pan around while we got this guy. The back of the shirt looks pretty straight. There's a little bit off there, but we won't mess with that. Shoes look good. The rest of the cuffs look good. The fingertips surprisingly don't have anything on them. Mostly look white. Okay, let's see what we can do about that cuff. Looks like it's coming from the side. It might be right here. It might be one further up. Turns into a lot of guesswork. This is the back. I don't know where my cursor went. Oh, it's just really small. So let's go to this. This is the back, and so it was the front of the cuff we were looking at, which must be this torn out piece here. It looks like we just got too much white. So our red layer is above our white layer, so we should just be able to paint onto that over the top. Did it again, wrong color. So I'm going to click this, grab the red, okay. I'm on the red layer. This should be the front of the arm. Here we go again. We may be overcorrecting at this point, but I want to see where it's at. Okay, looks good. And we could do any number of other things in here, but we just want to clean up what we had. I'm going to turn off the layer. Save it again. That saves the PSD. Let me save as. We want to save as a PNG. And we want to save right over the top of Toon Guy body. And we come into Maya. It looks the same, doesn't it? Well, here's the magic. So with that guy selected, we're going to select our body. I'm going to go all the way over here in our attribute editor to the body shader. I'm going to select our file button here, and I'm just going to say reload. And look, that straightened itself out. We sure enough did overcorrect on the cuffs of the gloves, but the shirt looks better, and so do the pant cuffs. So as you can see, this is really kind of tedious work, or can be, really quickly. We go back and forth, back and forth. We correct, we overcorrect, and this was just what the automatic selection for the UV unwrap gave us. And as we can see, if we come back into Photoshop, I'm going to turn these guides back on. What we could have done, and I'll post some videos of some other people who definitely know way more about what they're doing than I do. There are a number of ways to do an unwrap and kind of manually produce these seams, right? As each one of these lines that kind of define the outside of the UV as a seam, and we could have cut the seam nice and evenly right where we knew where the glove and the arm were going to meet, because we knew we wanted a fine line there. So we could have cut that seam, made the hands differently. Probably would have definitely in spacing them, once we had them, we can move them around. We could just put all the glove stuff up here and just painted a big white spot instead of having it all over the board like this. One thing I think we will do really quick, just to show what we could do, is I'm going to add another layer, and then we're just going to say these are the other pants. Right, so we can easily, once we have this stuff separated out into layers, we can change some of this stuff. And so if we decided for whatever reason that we wanted this Toon Guy to have green pants, that'd be no problem. I could select a green color, move around in here and get something nice and green. And I could just fill this layer up with green. And then if we exported it again, we'd look like a Christmas mess. And we could do the same thing, right, with overlays on these different layers. This isn't a Photoshop tutorial, but here's some cool things we can do. We could do a pattern overlay on the jeans, which I think could have been really nice, right? So we've got, that one's not working so well. Let's grab this. Let's just say we'll darken, and then we can play with the opacity of this, right? And of course, we could go out and we could get some nice patterns that simulate a striped corduroy kind of a denim look. But let's just say we've got this. Click OK. Now when we resave, and go back to Maya, and click around a bunch more. I'm going to go to reload that image. And the pants got darker, and if we zoom in and look, we've got texture, we've got, you know, depth and variance. So there's a lot we can do with this. This, long story short, is probably too late already, but this really is a kind of a quick and dirty way to do this. We will come back and try a much more intentional unwrap and start placing these nicely. But for now, we're gonna use this, and we're gonna see what we can do. And we're really gonna spend probably a lot of time in Photoshop, just trying to make this look really cool and kind of giving our own spin to it. So I'm gonna save this guy, or increment and save, and we're gonna call that good enough for this particular video.